exercises, and she said you were helping other people and all this. Anyway, so I got out of that um, with my sister taking me out in her custody, as it were, and they had me under the mental health at Orange, and I had to go in and see them, and I was on all this medication, and within the 2 weeks that I was out, I gradually weaned myself off this medication, and I went in to see this a caseworker, and I said, "What are you to do?" And she said, "Oh, I'm just to keep an eye on you and make sure you're taking the medication." I said, "I'm not taking the medication because I don't need it." I said, "There's nothing psychologically wrong with me, um, that it can't be fixed um, by medication." And anyway, so I asked to see a psychiatrist, and he came in to see me, and then he told me that it was of my own free will that I came into the mental place, uh, um, or was put myself under this woman. And I said, "No, I haven't." Anyway, they brought this woman in, and she interviewed me. She was supposed to be a psychologist and whatever, and she did a report. Um, and I said to her, I said, "This is all wrong." I said, "This is not me," and she classed me as an alcoholic. And I said, "I haven't, of my own free will, I haven't taken a drink in my life." And she um, referred me to the um, Alcoholics Alcoholic Association. And I said, "What am I to say when I go in there and they say, 'How many drinks do you have a day?' or 'When do you drink?' or whatever?" And I'll say, um, I have not had a drink, or I don't drink at all. I don't do this." I said, "And what are they going to say about you?" And then she said, "Oh, I'm going to change." She changed the report then. But anyway, I just need to get back to this when I lost the children. So I was put on the witness stand, and came out of it, and I didn't totally know what had happened, but I felt regressed to a young child of about 8 or so, and I was hysterically crying. And the judge said, "I've never seen anything like this," and whatever. And anyway, I went back and sat down, and during the proceedings, the handler said to the judge, "Would you like to see a photograph of the children, um, of the children in question?" And he said, "Oh, yes, I would." And anyway, he gave him these photographs, and he looked at the children, and he said, "Oh, they're absolutely beautiful children." And he said, Alan Parker said, "Would you like to meet them one day, Your Honour?" And he said, "Oh, could I?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "The middle one, she was absolutely a beautiful little girl." And he said, "Oh, the middle one is particularly playful, and is particularly, uh, you know, is playful and fun-loving and cooperative." And I thought, why is he saying all this? And why are they talking like this? Anyway, and then the judge said he'd have his verdict, his verdict finished by early afternoon. And so we went back into court after lunchtime, and the judge said, "Look, I hand custody over to Mr. Parker, and he said the mother will um, have certain access to the children. His barrister stood up and said, "Oh, this will be," and yelled at the judge and said, "This will be detrimental to the children's well-being when they've got all these wonderful people around them to look after them." And the judge said, he said, "But what about the mother?" And they said, "It's the children that's important." And he said, and Alan Parker said through his solicitor that what he wanted, that no access be given to me whatsoever. And he said that there will be no access to any one of these children, and she's basically banned never to see them. But she can send letters to them once a month. They don't have to respond, but send letters to her, send letters through Alan Parker once a month, and send presents, Christmas and birthdays, and that's the only access I had. He knew that I wouldn't keep that up because the judge said if Mr. Parker deems the letters not suitable for the children, he can rip them up and not show them to the children. And I thought, oh, well, he's done everything else and they've done everything else. The letters won't get through. And so I never saw my youngest daughter from the time that she was 5 years of age. And the next daughter, she was 7 years of age, and the other one was about 8.5 or going on not quite 9. And I never saw them again. I saw my one daughter once. She came to Orange, she came to see me, but I won't go into what she said. She had a boyfriend with her. But then I never saw them again. I thought that I would get contact with them when they were adults because our relationship was so good when they were little. But I wasn't told where they lived or who had access to them or anything. I went through community services, the protective people, and I found out that my middle daughter had 3 different birth dates. She had her original birth date, and she had a birth date that was on the records with what's the people called where you pay money for maintenance. Anyway, and they had a different birth date on her. And my middle daughter, she wasn't given a birth date. She didn't exist until she was 5 years of age. She later on asked me why she wasn't registered. She had no birth date. She didn't exist. My solicitor, who was in with the cult, Sue Owens, she was the one. She said, "You've got to get your daughter registered." And I said, and she said, "Why haven't you got her registered?" I said, "Because Alan Parker is saying that she wasn't his daughter." I later on found out that she wasn't his child. I do know who she is, what child she was fathered by, what man she was fathered by, and I thought he's only saying this because he wants me to be classed as a slut and to be classed as a dreadful person, and this is what he's told my daughter, that I wouldn't have her registered. But anyway, she finally got registered. Alan Parker had told me that my middle daughter was very similar to me. He said that I would say that she was this type of person that could be very easily hypnotized and whatever, and could be used by the cult, um, as were the other two. My During the time, it wasn't a very long after. It was probably a year or so that I found out that um, two of my daughters were talking about the abuse and um, the physical and sexual abuse that they were being given at the hands of Alan Parker. The three of them were living with him, um, and two of them were taken away and put into um, foster care. The third child said that no, she wasn't. She didn't know anything about it. Um, but when I had access, we're going back a bit now. When I had access, and um, I don't know whether I told a judge, but I told somebody that the girls were coming to my house, and the youngest one, she was only 5 or 6. She was very sleepy and tired, and I used to put her into bed, and she'd have 2 or 3 hours sleep, and then she would be smiling and happy. And I asked her why she was so tired, and she told me that she said, "Daddy's got me in bed with him, and I can't go to sleep because he's playing with me all night." And I told the I don't know whether it was I think I told the judge this, and the judge stopped me in the middle of it, and he said, "Oh, what a dreadful day!" He said, "Your girls used to have you, and when they'd arrive at your house, you'd put her to bed, you'd put her to sleep." And they totally dismissed this business about them being sexually abused. So I gathered from all of this that they, once they took it to the children's court, they could then dismiss the sexual abuse. And then when they took it into the family court, none of this sexual abuse was brought up at all. Um, so I lost my children. And so in the last, I tried to get in touch with them many times. Um, and then I had contact with two of them, the eldest two, for about 3 years, but they wouldn't speak to me. I was being asked all these questions, and it was only texting information backwards and forwards, and so I never really realised whether. Never fully understood whether I was in fact talking to my daughters or I was talking to their handlers. I think it was probably a bit of both. And my daughter, what this cult has done, they used to set people up in positions of authority where they could serve the cult. Um, and my daughter she did a degree in forensic science, but she never worked as a forensic scientist. And I asked her why she didn't, uh, why she didn't, and she said that she didn't want to, and she found this way of photographing babies, um, and she could earn a living like that. But I think it was because she couldn't sustain the altar part that could do the forensic science. And my second daughter, she became a very well educated uh, young woman. She got her master's and a couple of different degrees in teaching, and worked. And I'm not sure whether she still works there at a very prestigious private school in Sydney. And my youngest one became a preschool teacher, and then later on became a primary primary school teacher, but I haven't seen her since she was 5 years of age. And so then when they were asking me all these questions and I would give them a lot of information, and I did say about this occult and how they were being used. My daughter had contacted me together with the man that she later on married. I would assume he was her handler, and there were other men at this meeting that they held, and I remember the date of it. And they phoned me up and they said if I didn't stop talking about Ian Parker, that it was going to be bad for me, and that I was fucked. You're fucked, they said. And they said, you're nothing but a whore. And I said, I am not. And they were trying to yell and scream at me on the phone. And I said, no. And I kept my calm. And I said, and anyway, that was on the Saturday night, Sunday morning. On the Monday, I went to the police and tried to make a statement. And this man, he got me out of there. He said, come on, lady, get out. We're not waiting for you. You're rambling on and whatever. And he got me out, and he got me out, and outside he threatened me. So that often happened to me if I was going to go into a court. Different ones grabbed hold of me and wouldn't let me go into a courtroom, or they wouldn't allow me to speak with anyone in authority.
Can I ask you, is that you?
Pardon?
Is that you in the photo?
Yes.
So that photograph is you in the photo there with the children?
Yes. And anyway,
now, at that point, you don't look like you're in your 20s. You look like you're about 14.
Oh, well, I couldn't be 14 when that little girl in the front is my daughter.
Oh, okay.
And I did have. I tried to get school photographs from the high school that I went to. I was throughout my schooling, I was very intelligent. I was always the top of the grade, and I found out later on that I was the dux of the high school that I went to in year 12, and I tried to get photographs or the annual booklet that they put out, and it had pictures of me in there. And I phoned up and I said, I want a copy of the booklet. This was a number of years later, and she said, well, that's strange. She said, there's all the other yearbooks are there. She said, but that one, she said, isn't there. She said, so the Anne Hamilton Byrne do a lot of work in covering their tracks, such as medical reports and things like that. They get you to sign papers and you don't realise that you're handing over the reports, and they get all the reports so that you can't prove what you're saying. So, and that's me, all right. I know that that's me. Anyway, now, and there was another situation that happened as well, that when I was about 13 or 14 or something like that, I was being sexually abused by my sister's boyfriend. She was 7 years older than me, and he was about 15 or so years older than her, and he was sexually abusing me as a before puberty. Then I came on to puberty, and I was apparently I was acting very strange, and they put me into boarding school for a year. And during that time, um, my sister, eldest sister, found out that I was pregnant, and she took me out of school and aborted me, and I ended up in hospital at the local hospital. And so Ellen Parker and this family had all that were all involved, and they're all protecting of each other. And my sister was on with him, and he got me to go to the hospital because I didn't remember having had a stay in the hospital. I remembered bits and pieces where the nun came up and had me back at school, and she came and gave me my dinner and all this sort of thing. And she said, "Are you well enough and to go back to class and all this?" And I did. And then changes came about. The nuns just completely ostracised me. I was basically where I'd been credited with a lot of things. I was a leader in the school, and I was only in Form 3. They ostracised me and took away my captaincy, house captaincy, and all this. I never realised what they did, and I think that they believed that I was promiscuous and I'd got myself pregnant, but I didn't even know what had happened. Anyway, when Alan Parker was questioning me all about my life, he took me back to all these different places that I'd talked about, different people, different houses, different towns, back to the high school, back to the convent where I was educated, and he was verifying what I was telling him, but I didn't know that I was telling him. He used to regularly say that I was being given, if I don't tell the truth, I'll be given the truth serum.
Can I point out something to you?
Yeah.
So the story you're telling me, right? So there's a Netflix has made a mini series called The Family.
Who has made the
enigmatic conservative Christian group known as The Family? It's a cult. Wields strong influence. They've done it as if it's done in Washington. Okay, but the story is really about the family. Now, here's very interesting. The story is about the influence that they have over this one woman. And this harrowing true story of the Broberg family, whose daughter Jan was kidnapped multiple times over periods of years in the 70s by a charismatic. That story is sounding very much like your story.
Yes, what
like
was
you were taken to this cult as a child and you didn't even know you had been there. And at some point, even your sister took you there. How did she get connected to the cult as a teenager is actually very strange. She must have been connected as a child. If she was connected as a child, you were probably taken there by your parents as a baby. Think about it.
No, no, I don't believe that. I believe that it all started with my sister. My sister was, my uncle had told me about my sister. He said at one stage, "You wouldn't believe the people that your sister knew, the high-end people, and what she was up to."
But just one of the things you mentioned to me was she used to take you hitchhiking when you were about 7 or 8 years old. That puts her at age 13, correct?
No, maybe when I was about 10. At 10, she used to take me hitchhiking, and I remember her putting me in the bath and washing me, and men walking past. So I think that she
Okay,
probably sold me.
and that was that house you would have been taken to,
I
and
don't know whether it
you
was
wouldn't
that
know it's
house.
a child, exactly. You would just have gone to this place. Now, the interesting thing is that puts her at age 15, and if she at age 15 was um,
She was 17, she was
already connected to these people.
17, 18 years of age. She is 7 years older than me.
Okay, so she would have been 17. But that's still very interesting that a minor, this is my point. She's still a schoolgirl. She's a child. She's still in school. She's a minor. And she's so well connected with these people that she goes there for the weekend. And somehow she is allowed to take her younger sister with her. So your parents must have known where she was going to allow her to take you with her for the whole weekend. It is a sort of unusual story that a teenager
I
who's not even 18
don't
years old gets to take a young child away for the weekend to a place where the parents don't know where she's gone. Don't you think?
for the weekend. It would be um, only a number of hours that she would take me down to Melbourne and spend the whole day. And this is where I remember her meeting this man who later on became her boyfriend. And I think he had some connection with with the Anne Hamilton burn, but I don't think it really sort of came about until she was left home at 18 and she was living in these different houses in Melbourne, and she was still coming up home to home, and this is where her boyfriend raped me for it was a number of years. I was pre I was 12 11 12 that age at that time, and I was pregnant, I think at about 14 or so. And my daughter had said to me when she was 5 years of age, when she told me what was happening, and she said to me that she was absolutely terrified. She said that Daddy will get me pregnant like you were pregnant when you were 13. And I said, no, I wasn't. And she said, yes, you were, Mum. And I assume she got that from her father. But what happened with that? When Alan Parker took me to all these different places and verified what had happened, he said they tried to protect each other, the ones in the group, and he what he did was he said to me that I should have my astrology chart done. And I said, I didn't know what this meant and whatever. And he convinced me and he said, you ring up the hospital and find out what time you were born, because I didn't know what time I was born. And then what happened was he made an appointment with the hospital, and he said that they get them out of storage or whatever, and they did do. And when I was stood there at the desk and he was stood there, and the nurse who consequently was one of the girls that I went to school with, she was a nurse at the hospital, and she turned away or went out of the room or something like this, and he grabbed the file and put it in his coat, opened up his coat and put it in his coat. And I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he said, this could, I'm not sure whether he said it put him in jail. He said, this could put your sister in jail and you don't want her to go to jail, do you? And I said, no. And they got the records of my stay in the hospital. I don't know whether there are any records, but anything like that that could incriminate them, they stole them from the hospital. And another episode was that when my husband came home from uh, uh, a long stay at working away from me, I was in dreadful pain on having sex, and he said, "You should get this looked at." My son was about 15 months old, and um, and I went to the doctor, and he had me in there for about 2 hours, and he was talking to me, and he said, um, um, "You've had you've been curated," he said. And he told me what that meant. And I said, "No, I haven't." And he couldn't understand why I didn't remember. He said, "Because you've got raw patches inside of you." And I said, "Oh, I know what that is from. That's because I had a difficult time with having given birth to my son." Anyway, when I told Alan Parker about this, that I told this doctor all this information, that we went to the doctor's surgery. This was a few years later. We went to the doctor's surgery, and at that time, the nurse used to put all the files and that on the table, um, ready to hand to the doctor when he came out. And anyway, she she had them all out because Alan Parker had made an appointment for me. And she said, "Oh, just a minute." She said, "I've got your file here." She said, and anyway, she turned her back or whatever, or went out of the room or got distracted or whatever. And he grabbed the file and put it in his coat and went out and got in the car. And he took it out and he had the file. And I said, "What'd you do that for?" And he said, "This could put me in jail." And he said, "I'm not going for, I'm not going to jail for you or going to jail for anyone." So they get rid of records, and this is why they were searching my house all the time and taking away paperwork, taking away court reports, or taking away um, anything that I was remembering. Um, Many people have said to me, "You should write all this down." I said, "It's no use writing it down." I said, "Because they steal it and get rid of it." Because I'd done that. I'd done that before. I lost hope with having this brought out into the open. I just said that with anyone that I spoke to, that the evidence is there. That it needs somebody to investigate, but the police wouldn't investigate. Um, when I told them, anyway.
Wow, that's a really incredible story, and
This is just really the line of how I lost my children and really what happened with that. Um, and then
and
there's
and
another side of it I won't go
you
into. Yeah,
you
sorry,
have
go on.
you have no idea of how many children you may have had, because it's huge chunks of your memory that is missing, right? And you mentioned to me before that you believe
I
that there may have been other children that you may have had, that they may have wiped your
know
memory clean. And
I know that I had a child. I was um, very physically fit and very slim and whatever. And when I was 21, um, a lot of things happened when I just got married and my husband went away to work. And I remember having friends at school, and all of a sudden they all dropped me and they told me that I was looked like I was pregnant and whatever. And I uh, failed a couple of subjects, and I never failed anything. I was always top of the class. And then I remember when I was looking at that time, I was looking up, buying the newspaper each day and looking up the death notices, and I was looking for the death notice of this child that I had, but I didn't know why I was looking in the paper, and I was crying hysterically, and I wouldn't go to college, and I didn't know what was wrong. And then I realised many years later.
What age was that?
This was when I was 21 or 22. Let me think. 21. I was
So
just
there was the
married.
child that you had when you were 13 or 14, and then there's a child that you had that you were 21, maybe,
I
possibly.
I didn't have a child when I was 13 or 14. I was aborted. I was
Well,
pregnant.
this is what we've been told. This is what you've been told, right? That it was aborted. But when we are dealing with people that have got surgeons, I mean, the apparently Anne Hamilton had somebody lobotomized because they wanted to leave the cult.
I was being
So
threatened
she
with
had
that.
surgeons, she had psychologists, she had
She had all,
an entire hospital that she owned.
yes, and I was being threatened with that, and I didn't know what that was. And they said that Alan Parker was saying that they were going to give me an lobotomy, and I didn't remember anything. And now he told me, which I remember, he said, um, if you remember to forget, you will be all right. But if you forget and you remember, then it's going to be bad for you. So I was being threatened all this time, and I was having fishing wire put round my neck and being strangled, and a whole range of things, and being threatened. And but that's another side of my own personal life outside of my children, where I was being raped all the time, and I was looking up in the I don't know what age I was, um, but I was probably I a young girl in age, because I was being regressed to a young child, and then I was being used. And I remember this particular day, and this man who I was being sold to, trafficked to. Um, he said to me, he said, "And how old are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm 8." And he said, and Alan Parker said, "Oh, she means that she's 28." I said, "No, I'm 8." So they'd regressed me to an 8-year-old and were using me for sexual purposes. But they were also using me with the cult, because I was able to um, I had certain abilities that other children or other people didn't have. And when I was at school, um, I would, the nuns put me at 8 years, 7 or 8 years of age, they'd leave the classroom and put me in charge of the class, and I would be teaching the class as an 8-year-old for a couple of hours, and they were stood up at the back looking through the window to see what I was doing. And I skipped the grade, and they and I used to go out into the playground, and a child would fall over, and I would uh, talk with them and tell the other kids what to do. Oh, don't move her until she feels a little bit better, and then um, I was telling them what to do, and the nuns said to me, "How do you know what to do?" and whatever. And I was putting my hands over their sores, and I was sort of basically a healer, and I was doing that. But I was always psychic, or I was always a medium, but I didn't know. I didn't know that, and that's how I was being used by Sarah Hamilton. Sorry, Anne Hamilton Byrne group, that I was being put into a deep trance situation, and I was being questioned about um, once from the other side, and there was a whole lot of spiritual stuff that was going on as well. and I was also doing remote viewing, and I had a lot of, I don't know what other abilities that I have that I really haven't delved into. But she used to be getting a lot of information from me, and ones that were in the group and that passed on, I was used as the go-between, as a medium. Um,
That's makes a lot of sense, because what I know about this creating altars, and it's quite well documented, and there's quite a lot of science out on this, and they have to start with the child that's young and prepare the child, prepare the altar, and then they have to prepare you to be able to go back to that time. So if you're flashing back to the age of 8, right, then it would
yes,
probably have taken them about 3 years to get you ready to be able to go back to that altar. Because it's like you got to prepare a garden bed, you got to put the seeds in the garden bed, you got to get the plants started so that you can regress them back to that point. There's a whole intricate set of psychological procedures that has to be done. Part of it is torture, physical, emotional. Rape is a big part of it. It's usually done. Usually, and it's interesting you mentioned nuns. So you were in a Catholic school, were you?
yes. And I was told by Ellen Parker that the Catholic girls were, people from the Catholic faith were the best subjects that they could have, because we were already indoctrinated with obeying and obeying uh, authorities and all that sort of thing. But what I've come to believe is part of I fitted the what they wanted. I was able to dissociate from a very early on age. I had a dysfunctional family. I had sisters who were extremely jealous of me and were ready to, at a minute's notice, to degrade me or treat me badly. Um, I could. I was a medium. I remember I'm not sure what age I was, probably 4 or 5. Um, I was. Um, I used to go and talk to Jesus and Mary, and my brother told my mother about this. Um, I believe that my mother was a medium, but it was in those days that she didn't do readings or anything like that.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
Is there Irish ancestry or Celtic
yes,
ancestry in your bloodline?
yes. On my father's side, especially, but I sort of felt that this came down my mother's line, and I believe that um, they wanted my children. They did the experimentation on me, um, and found out what worked and what didn't work, and then they were able to um, quicken that up with my children, my daughters, um, and they what
So
they
you feel that they've done the same with your children and your grandchildren?
yes, yes. I have never seen my grandchildren, so you can imagine that all of the growing up time, it's been extremely traumatic for me. It's been a very difficult situation, because I have not seen my daughters uh, since they were really babies, excepting for once I saw my eldest daughter. But all the birthdays and Christmases and all the first school days and all the um, high school days and all the boyfriends and all the, you know, getting married and having their own children. I haven't seen my any of my grandchildren. They haven't, when I had contact with them, they never told me that they were pregnant and having children. But I believe that they, their children were, have been used by this group as well. And a few years ago, there was a film made about it, about the Anne Hamilton Burn group, and it was by a woman, I should say, a woman called Rosie. And I contacted her, and she gave me all this bullshit of Anne Hamilton Burn being a religious sect, and she made a film of it. And I said, no, they're a pedophile group, and what they were doing, and a satanic group, and that's what they are. And so I have been stalked for many, many years. People were stalking me and chasing me around, and bashing my car and threatening me. When they told me to forget about Alan Parker, and it would be very difficult for me if I continued. I went to the police on Monday and didn't get the report done. They would never ever let me do a report, or if I made some sort of statement to any organisation, the the recordings of that would be taken so that there would be no access. And then on the Tuesday, they rammed my car, and that was deliberately set up. A lot of what they do with people is they stage car accidents, and what they also do is they give I don't know what the name of it is, a medicine, and it speeds up the heart, and they have a heart attack. They got rid of my brother. He this is quite emotional for me, but they got rid of him because they were their idea was that with everyone surrounding you, they would tell them a certain story about me, and then people would believe this. And when I said, no, this is not what I'm doing, or what I'm doing all this sexual stuff, they'd say, well, listen to all the people, and there would be nobody that would stand up for me, excepting my brother. And he said to my other brother, he said, there's something wrong with her. She's not the person that we know. She's different, and I know that she wouldn't do what Alan Parker is saying. And so they got rid of him, and they just get rid of different people who won't fall into line with them. They get rid of them, and goodness knows how many people they've gotten rid of. I had a young fellow who had crossed sides, as it were, to join with me, and he died in my house. The police tried to say that that I'd done it. They said, you're a person of interest. And I said, why would I be a person of interest? He was to help me. And so then they said that he died of an overdose, but they got rid of him. And goodness knows how many other people there have been that they've gotten rid of. This is anyway, so when they were stalking me, and what they do is they have these cells, or these groups of satanic followers, and they have these groups, and quite often, and what they've done with that I've had experience of, where I lived in Melbourne, the whole street was brought up vacant land and houses built on it, and they were all part of the cult or a satanic group. And then in the other places, they directed me to go to different places, and I never knew how they did it, but it was post-hypnotic suggestion, because I'd see something in the house or something outside, and I think, oh, I know that, and then it'd be like, this is the house that I need to buy or whatever. And this particular group at Orange, they were using me for their rituals and whatever, and sexual purposes. And then when I found out about this, and I tried to sell my house and I couldn't sell the house. They blocked the sale of the house because they wanted me living there. And then I went to another place and I was directed to go to that, and they were using me. So I'm not a young person at the present time, and but they have used me from, I'd say definitely from early 20s or age 20. They have used me all of my life for 50 years. So if you can imagine being used in this way, any friends that I have, they got rid of, and other friends they put me in touch with who kept an eye on me, were sort of basically handlers, stalking me, and kept me in poverty the whole time. You know, when I was teaching, I thought that would stand me in good stead, that the solicitor would get up and say, oh, she's a teacher and she can provide for the children. She said none of that. And the psychiatrist that I said to you that I went to him 2 or 3 times a week for at least 3 years, or maybe even 4 years, and he did these glowing reports on me. He never turned up at the court proceedings, and I said to the solicitor, well, where is he? He was my only person to stand up for me. And she said, he said that he wasn't going to come to the court. She said, and she was in it. She told me that I was paying for all the her children's fees for school and whatever. But anyway, I went to this psychiatrist a couple of weeks after the court case, and just going back a little bit, before we were going into court, he tried to get me to ditch the solicitor. He said, I don't think this solicitor is doing you any good. You should get another one. I said, no, it's too late. I said, we're going to court in a couple of weeks. And he told me when I went back to him, I said, I went to you for about 3 years, and I said 3 or 4 years, and I said, I spilled my guts. I told you everything that I was remembering. I told you everything. I trusted you, and you didn't turn up at the court. And he said, what he said was, which I don't know whether it's true or not, he said, well, my report was changed. Your solicitor changed my report. And he said, I said to her, when I come into court, I'm going to ask the judge, now what affidavit am I answering, or what am I answering to that I made up, or is it the report that the solicitor changed? And he said, that's why I wouldn't go in. So I don't know whether that was all put up, because I know that he was involved in it. And I know that this young man that I met outside his surgery, and he later on got killed in my house, he he said to me quite a lot of
Sorry,
strange. Yeah, sorry, go on.
did a young man got killed in your house?
Yes.
How?
He, um, what happened was that this young man, he told me he was 32 at the time, and I was about 38 or 39, and we sort of got talking, and over a period of time, a year, he often came to my house and stayed at my house, and then we went to Queensland on a holiday for a couple of weeks and came back, and I went to school, and then he was staying in my house, and he told me on the Tuesday night there were two other people that came with him, a man and a woman, and stayed in my house as well. And on the Tuesday night, he said, "You don't take me seriously," and whatever. And I said, "What do you mean?" And um, he said, um, "I want to get married to you." And he said, "We'll sell the house and go and live in Queensland." And he said, he told me a lot of things. He was a martial arts person, and he told me that I would never get my children back, and I said yes, I would. And he said, "Cut your losses now. We'll sell the house, and I'll get married to you, and we'll go to Queensland and whatever." And I said, "No, I'm going to go to this court. I'm going to see this court thing through, because why should I lose my children when I've done nothing wrong?" And he said, "You don't know what this group is about and whatever." And so he basically jumped ship, as it were, and he saw a way to get out of this group, or how he was. I think he was being used more or less as a enforcer or something like that. And of course,
Uh,
he was often on drugs.
c-
And then,
can I ask?
when,
uh,
yeah,
Can I
how
ask
he
you
died.
how he died?
Yeah, well, what happened was, on the Tuesday night, he asked me to marry him, and I said, "It's too soon." I said, "Wait till Christmas." I said, "See how we go in the next 6 months." And he said, and I said, "Then I'll decide with it." And he was happy with that. And anyway, and then on the Wednesday, I stayed home from school. He went out and phoned up and said I was sick or whatever, and I stayed home. And then he said that he wanted to get some sort of sedative or drugs or whatever.